Welcome back everyone, this is going to be my new Spider-Man No Way Home video for that big announcement that the Sony president was making in his interview with Variety, so we'll break it all down. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs. He basically confirms what their plans are for crossing over the MCU with the Sony Spider-Man movies like Venom 2, and what's going on with their Sinister Six movies, everything that they're doing. It was huge, so if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We're supposed to get the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer in the next couple of weeks. Of course, I'll be doing videos for that. The Loki episodes are starting really soon too. I'll be doing full episode videos for that, just like I did for the other Marvel Disney Plus series. Speaking of TV, Sony is also making some live-action Spider-Man spin-off TV shows, but that's completely separate. I'll do separate videos about that when we get more details. This is just about the future of Spider-Man movies. But within this interview, the Sony president was also talking about all the Tobey Maguire, the Andrew Garfield stuff, and Spider-Man No Way Home, in addition to what's going on with Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, and obviously the new Kraven movie, and how they're handling doing Aaron Taylor Johnson Kraven and having him as the MCU Quicksilver at the same time. So we'll start with all the stuff that they confirm first, then I'll talk about some of the other recent rumors, because there were some pretty big claims this past week that were seemingly connected to what this Sony president was saying. There were a couple really big things that he did confirm. But the first big thing is just the actual basis for this whole interview with the Sony president, or at least the way that Variety wrote their slam, was how Kevin Feige and the Marvel people plan on crossing the MCU over with Sony's Spider-Man movies. And that includes Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, the Morbius movie, the new Kraven movie that I just talked about with Aaron Taylor Johnson's version of the character. They're doing that Spider-Woman movie that we just heard about a little while ago, then Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the animated films, because they were talking about using the live-action actors as their versions of the Spider-Man characters in that. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much other stuff that they talk about during this interview that's really cool. So the actual person that they were talking to was the president of Sony's live-action movies, but their conversation starts with a discussion of how they cast Aaron Taylor Johnson as Kraven in the other movies that they were working on. So the Sony president said that they cast him not because of all his Quicksilver, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Marvel stuff. He said that they cast him because Aaron Taylor Johnson was starring in a movie with Brad Pitt called Bullet Train that Sony was making, and they just saw the dailies and thought that Aaron Taylor Johnson was awesome, so then they cast him as Kraven. The funny thing the Sony people said is that they didn't even recognize him as Quicksilver, like they didn't make that connection in their head. They just saw an actor that they thought was great, and then they had to do the research on what other roles he'd done and say, oh wow, he was just in Avengers Age of Ultron. But then their conversation goes to Spider-Man, specifically the lack of Spider-Man in the Sony movies so far, like the first Venom movie. So the Sony president says, we don't really think of our 900 characters as the Spideyverse. They control over 900 characters because they have the rights to the Spider-Man character. He said, we have a Marvel universe. They call their Spider-Verse the Sony universe of Marvel characters. This is the technical name for their cinematic universe. He says, wait until you see this next Venom, talking about Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. You don't miss Spider-Man. Basically saying that there is Spider-Man in Venom 2. So obviously the Sony president isn't saying exactly how Spider-Man appears during Venom 2. He just says that Venom 2 will explain Spider-Man inside the Venom-verse of movies, the Sony universe of Marvel characters. Then they sort of acknowledge the complicated web that they're weaving to make a Spider-Man pun between the MCU movies, those versions of the characters, and all the Sony movies and those versions of the characters. Like Michael Keaton's Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming showing up in the same white prison costume in the Morbius trailer. But the Sony president says, we get it, there actually is a plan for crossing these universes over. I think now maybe it's getting a little more clear for people where they're headed, and I think when Spider-Man No Way Home comes out, even more will be revealed. So they're basically saying that a lot of the crossing over of these universes will be explained during Spider-Man No Way Home. More on that and the idea of the multiverse, the Spider-Verse in a second, but then the Sony president went on to talk about how the Kraven movie with Aaron Taylor Johnson's version of the character, who's also Quicksilver in the MCU Avengers movies, is the next piece in explaining the way that the MCU will connect to the Sony Spider-Man movies. But here's where they start talking about all the Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man stuff in Spider-Man No Way Home. So the article goes on to say, one of the worst kept secrets in Hollywood is that No Way Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, will be diving headfirst into the multiverse and incorporating characters from Sony's earlier Spider-Man movies, starring Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Alfred Molina, for example, told Variety in April that he will be digitally de-aged in Spider-Man No Way Home to look like he did as the villain Doctor Octopus at the end of 2004's Spider-Man 2. The implication is that whatever happens in Spider-Man No Way Home could allow for Tom Holland to live in Sony's Marvel movies while also somehow being part of the MCU, But then they acknowledged that Spider-Man No Way Home, Spider-Man 3, is the last movie in Sony and Marvel's sharing contract. So I'll cover that in a second too, because this president at Sony was also saying some really cool stuff about his relationship with Kevin Feige. Apparently they're total bros. But during that small segment talking about the multiverse, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield stuff, there's a whole lot to unpack there. So first, the Sony president, Variety, acknowledging that they're already doing Spider-Verse related stuff in Spider-Man No Way Home. They don't come right out and say Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield themselves will show up in the movie, so be careful talking about that. They were just referring to the fact that they've confirmed they're doing versions of the characters from those movies, like Alfred Molina confirmed that he's the same version of Doctor Octopus, and his story in Spider-Man No Way Home begins the moment his body goes into the river in Spider-Man 2. I actually did a separate Doctor Octopus video a little while ago about that, so I'll link it down in the description. He pulled a bit of a Tom Holland, Mark Ruffalo, and just completely gave away where his story picks up and what's going on with his Doctor Octopus during Spider-Man 3. But the whole thing with the de-aging, that's the exact same thing that they did with Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer during Ant-Man and the Wasp. Obviously, they de-aged them a lot more than they're going to have to de-age Alfred Molina. He's not quite as old as they are. But Doctor Strange is a big crossover Avengers character during Spider-Man No Way Home, and the movie is coming out right before Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness. The producers on WandaVision said that they consulted with John Watts, the director of Spider-Man 3, when they were making WandaVision. So pull out your Vision memes. This whole conversation with the Sony president makes me feel like 100% they're just using the multiverse as a way to say how the MCU is connected with the movies like Venom 2, the Morbius movie, and how you can have Aaron Taylor Johnson be both Quicksilver and Kraven the Hunter at the same time. Just alternate universe versions of all these characters. And when they say that Venom 2 will explain more of how Spider-Man himself fits into the Sony universe, Andy Serkis actually claimed that during the Venom 2 trailer that Tom Hardy's Venom and this version of the Daily Bugle with the logo from the Tobey Maguire movies, this version of J. Jonah Jameson, are not aware of the existence of a Spider-Man yet at the beginning of the movie, which to me just screams Venom 2 post-credit scene with a big Spider-Man reveal. Like they have no idea that Spider-Man is out there, but that's just at the beginning of the movie, and the idea is that they will slowly discover him by the end of the movie. And once we see Venom 2 in Spider-Man No Way Home, that will also explain Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man costume in the Morbius trailer. There have been so many theories about what's going on with that, like if it's a misdirect or if it's legit and it'll be the exact same when the movie actually comes out. But the good news with that is that the Morbius movie is coming out in January, just like a couple weeks after Spider-Man No Way Home, so we won't have to wait that long to get the final piece of the puzzle. But mostly the Sony president is saying they'll explain how all this Spider-Verse stuff is going to work in the future of Tom Holland Spider-Man crossing over with all these characters in Spider-Man No Way Home and in Venom 2. Then getting to the Sinister Six of it all, the Sony president talked about the future of Spider-Man in the MCU and future Sinister Six movies, because they still have to renew their sharing contract with Marvel right now. So he said the great thing is we have this very excellent relationship with Kevin, talking about Kevin Feige. There's an incredible sandbox there to play with. We want those MCU movies to be absolutely huge because that's great for us and our Marvel characters at Sony. And I think it's the same thing on their side, but we have a great relationship. There's lots of opportunities, I think, that are going to happen. One of those opportunities would be finally making a movie about the Sinister Six. They do acknowledge the Sinister Six spin-off movie that Sony tried to make from the Amazing Spider-Man franchise. Like the end of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 was meant to set up a separate Sinister Six movie, so they had planned to make Amazing Spider-Man 3, but also separately make a Sinister Six movie. Like Amazing Spider-Man 3 was not going to be the Sinister Six movie, it was going to be something different. So the Sony president goes on to say, it's tough because I think these projects are the kinds of things we have to work on in the dark just because of secrecy. They're not ready until they're ready. He says Kraven is a good example of that because they didn't rush it. He said we could have made that movie 3 years ago, and the reason why they waited till now was just to wait until the script was good. So according to Variety and the Sony president, they're basically confirming what we already knew. Sony plans on renewing their sharing contract with Marvel again, making more Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland, and yes, they do plan on making Sinister Six movies. But they are considering the Sinister Six movies to be separate from the Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland that they're also talking about. Like yes, more Tom Holland Spider-Man, more Spider-Man in the MCU, but also Sinister Six movies that also connect with the MCU. So here's where we get to the recent rumors that are tied to what this Sony president was saying. There were a lot of other sites this past week that were reporting rumors that Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin from the Tobey Maguire movies would actually be the main villain of Spider-Man No Way Home, and that he would be assembling a multiverse version of the Sinister Six team. made up of characters from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies like himself, Doctor Octopus, and Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man movies like Jamie Foxx's Electro, and the MCU movies. And that the title of the movie, No Way Home, was actually meant to be a reference to the Sinister Six villains not having a way to get home to their own universes, like they're trapped in the MCU for some reason. Which is supposed to be the connection to Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness and WandaVision with what Scarlet Witch is doing, implying that she's partially responsible for creating some of the circumstances that lead to the Sinister Six villains from the multiverse getting trapped. So that sounds like a whole lot to unpack there. If Spider-Man No Way Home suddenly sounds like it's way too overstuffed with too many characters, what I actually think is going on, rumors and all, is that most of these other Sinister Six characters everyone is talking about, the Sony President is talking about, will only be in the movie for a little while. Like, it sounds like, based on what Alfred Molina is saying, Doctor Octopus and Electro are main characters, but if this Green Goblin rumor is true, then he'd probably be just a post-credit scene cameo or a really short cameo scene at the end of the movie, teasing a full-blown Sinister Six sequel down the road. But right now the rumor is that the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer is releasing sometime really soon. Tom Holland's birthday is next week, so everyone is expecting them to do something special next week. Whatever they do wind up posting, of course I'll do a video about it. My full Loki episode videos will start posting in the next 2 weeks too, so make sure you have alerts enabled for my channel so you don't miss any of those. There's a lot of really big stuff coming up this summer. This is just the beginning. Congratulations, Andrew Wright, you're the giveaway winner from my last big Marvel video. Please email me on the About page of my channel so I can get your contact details. Everyone click here for that last big Spider-Man No Way Home teaser trailer video and Easter eggs, and click here for my Eternals trailer video for Kit Harington's Black Knight character and his future in the Avengers movies. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys tonight.